When explorers first entered the Gottschall rock shelter in the driftless bluffs of southwestern Wisconsin, they found what appeared to be a riddle carved in stone. Beneath the overhang of a sandstone cliff, far from any major habitation, a wall had been deliberately smoothed, its surface prepared, not by natural erosion but by human hands. And on this unlikely canvas, 5 figures had been painted in red and black pigment, upright, aligned, and strangely ordered. Early interpretations floundered. The figures were called mythic, ceremonial, enigmatic, but none could explain the unsettling precision of the composition. Why they stood in graded heights, why some bore ropes to stars, why the central falcon looked less like a bird and more like a vector. It was a mystery, certainly, but not a mystery of meaninglessness. It was the kind that suggested message. The longer one looks at the panel, the more it resists mythic vagueness. Its elements are not decorative. They are positional, directional, sequential. What appears at first to be a tableau slowly reveals itself as a structure, layered, recursive, and logically ordered. This is not sacred art in the modern sense. It is ancestral record rendered in triads. These are not metaphors. They are mechanics. The Gottschall Panel does not merely depict belief. It performs it, encoding cosmology, genealogy, and geography into one continuous visual system. This, then, is the purpose of what follows, not to impose interpretation, but to read what is already there. The first triad creation as ascent. At the far right edge of the panel, Redhorn stands small but unambiguously central. His body is upright. His eyes are defined with care. A yellow star appears on his forehead, appearing at the end of a rope that begins by his own hand, the mark of his sovereignty not only as a creator, but as the first bearer of conscious connection. From his mouth, a painted line flows leftward, often interpreted as a braid. This is the line of connection extending onward. It is not a flourish. It is an act. It is the breath of creation, the intentional vector by which the unmanifest begins to take shape. Redhorn's function is not passive origin. It is deliberate articulation. He speaks, and the world begins to orient itself. The line of his breath touches the back of a large, upright falcon, rendered in bold pigment and placed at the midpoint of the panel's ascending slope. The falcon stands poised, its curved beak visible, its posture grounded. It is storms as he walks, the sky being. Its position between Redhorn and the turtle reveals its role. It is the mediator. Not simply a bird, not merely atmospheric, it is the embodied plane of heaven, that which transmits intention into activity. Next to the falcon's head is a triangle, the pattern of the triad, and more patterns are represented on its face. So the falcon does not originate power, but it channels it, placing it into position. It is the function of heaven as instrument. Over the falcon's head, a crest of feathers form the continuing line, still rising, still clear, pointing at the highest point in the composition, the turtle. Unlike traditional associations of the turtle with the base of the cosmos, here it sits at the summit. Its domed form is fully realized, planted in space as the culmination of the breathline's movement. This is not the turtle that bears the world, it is the world, the realization of breath into form, the container of all life and labor to come. Its elevated placement inverts expectation. Earth is not the foundation of creation, but its objective. It is where the abstract becomes concrete, where speech becomes matter. Not descent, but ascent into density. Not fall, but completion. The structure of this triad is not symbolic. It is functional. Redhorn initiates the cosmos with intentional breath, holds the rope of genetic continuity. His word moves outward. The falcon receives the breath and positions it within the sky. It is the filter through which intention enters structure, an upper-world agent, but not final. The turtle receives the force and becomes its form, not passive earth, but formed earth, the realization of divine intention. But this triad is not isolated. Its meanings deepen in light of the other symbolism. We shall see that the falcon of heaven is reflected in a smaller falcon that represents life, the transfer of force from heaven into generation. In contrast, this larger falcon, located centrally in the first triad, functions above life. It represents not biology, but heaven's instrumentality. It is what stands between voice and form, spirit and mass. It does not carry life, but positions creation. The breathline that began with Redhorn does not simply create the world. It defines the plane of all future activity. Everything in the painting unfolds beneath this first triad, both in spatial position and logical order. This is the cosmological canopy, the architectural precondition. There is no myth here. There is sequence structure. It is not metaphorical ascent. It is the articulated mechanics of emergence. Word is spoken. Force is positioned. Form is realized. Creation is not a spontaneous act. It is a triadic system, composed, directed, and fulfilled. And once fulfilled, it sets the boundary within which the rest of the painting operates. Descent, labor, succession, and burial. The sons of Redhorn stand beneath the turtle, not figuratively but literally, because everything that lives is already contained within what has been formed. Thus, the first triad is not only the structure of creation, it is the map of all things that follow. And the turtle does not lie at the bottom, it waits at the top. The second triad, the descent of the builders. Below the cosmological triad, beneath the arc traced by Redhorn's breath, a new sequence begins, again initiated by Redhorn himself. The second triad consists of Redhorn, then his first son, followed by his second son. This time he is not simply the speaker of creation, but the first bearer of a connection that will define the human realm. At the triad's origin stands Redhorn, who now appears not as speaker, but as holder. In his hand he grips a rope, and that rope rises to connect with a star positioned on his forehead. The gesture is clear. Redhorn is not simply a cosmic initiator, but the source of a lineage. His connection is not received from above. It is held directly and affixed to his own identity. He possesses the original thread. He is the progenitor of what follows. To his left stands the first son, the figure through whom creation descends into complexity. His body is tall and proportionally powerful. His hair is red, clearly echoing his father's divine mark. One hand is raised, lifting a great mound-shaped form, a curved mass, deliberate and heavy, yet borne without visible strain. This is labor but not suffering. It is responsibility shaped into posture. Two marks define his body, rendered not as decoration but as a single integrated glyph, the sun jaguar. Across his chest sits a large circular disc, unfilled, whole. Below it, across his stomach, a jaguar snarls in profile. This pairing is not incidental. It is a recognized compound, present across the Mesoamerican world as the union of celestial power and terrestrial sovereignty. The sun jaguar is a figure of divine intensity, radiant, dominant, and transitional. It is not a metaphor for personality, it is a historical identity. It names those who held power when the world was configured differently. But its form is not fixed in glory. The unfilled sun on his chest does not radiate. It is hollow, defined not by presence, but by absence. This is not illumination, it is negation. The sun here does not signify life or light. It signifies extinction, the end of a solar lineage, the closure of an epoch. It marks him not as bearer of ongoing light, but as remnant of what once governed. It is the sign of a closed cycle. Beneath it, the jaguar grounds that celestial finality in terrestrial rule. It is the Olmec jaguar, not a generic predator, but the emblem of an older order. The mouth of the jaguar, the apex being, the sovereign figure whose time has passed. It represents ancestral force, the last of its kind still standing, but already marked by terminus. To wear the jaguar is not to symbolize instinct, it is to signal inheritance and impending disappearance. Taken together, the sun-jaguar glyph names the first son precisely. He is powerful, but he is late. He lifts the mound not as founder, but as builder of a world that is already beginning to fossilize. He is the incarnation of civilizational force and its collapse. His divinity is real, but it is over. The symbols do not elevate him. They define the boundary of his kind. Near this sun appears a small falcon, distinct from the large sky falcon of the first triad. From this small falcon, a rope extends to the star on the sun's forehead. This detail is critical. The line of connection that Redhorn holds is not passed directly to him. It flows through life, through the small falcon, a figure aligned not with heaven, but with generation, with the world of breath, blood, and animal continuity. This is no ordinary descendant. He is born of the red-haired giantess, a mother outside the human frame. His features, markings, and burden mark him as intermediate, a being between realms, between kinds. He is not modern man. He is the builder, the one who raises structures. The sun jaguar on his body affirms both his divine inheritance and the extinction of his type. His role is not completion, but transition. He is the force that builds and the line that ends in death. To the left of the first sun stands the second sun, a figure at once connected and quiet. His hair is long and dark, a visual departure from both Redhorn and the first sun. His body is unmarked. No jaguar, no zero, no emblem of force or renunciation. He stands without burden, without symbol. He does not lift, he does not carry, but he is clothed. A rope leads to the star on his forehead, and that rope comes not from a falcon or divine source, but from the first sun. He is connected, not by act of creation, but by act of descent, by inheritance through transformation. The line that began with Redhorn has passed through the builder, and into him. This is transmission, not duplication. In his hand, the second sun holds another rope, distinct from the one that connects to his head. This rope extends outward, but its endpoint is nowhere marked. It is unfinished. It is potential, not result. He carries not the past, but the future, and that future is unwritten. This is the complete triad. Redhorn is the source and bearer of the original connection, holding the rope of descent affixed to the star of consciousness and divine function. First sun is red-haired, powerful, born of a giantess, formed of the divine but destined for extinction, receiving the line of life through the beasts of the earth and lifting the great mounds, the first act of civilization. Second sun is dark-haired, unmarked, born of the girl with the white beaver skin as a wrap, a figure of liminality and purity. He receives his connection from his brother and holds the rope that leads forward, awaiting what comes next. There is no allegory in this arrangement. There is no need for speculation. The Gottschall Panel does not symbolize succession. It structures it. This is the descent of the line, from creator to builder to inheritor. The rope is not myth. It is the visual grammar of biological and metaphysical continuity. And the rope that has not yet found its end waits in the hand of the last sun, held in readiness, bound to the next movement, whoever may come to take it. The third triad, the instruction of burial. The final triad completes the Gottschall composition not by drifting into abstraction, but by returning to the most concrete and irreversible truth of all, that what lives is eventually buried, and that what is buried becomes the medium of record. Yet the more closely one looks, the more apparent it becomes. This is not a static depiction of death. It is a functioning system, a triad of position, transmission, and instruction. At the summit of the panel sits the turtle, the largest and highest form in the image. But this is not the turtle of cosmological closure alone. It is something more complex. It is geometrically active. Its limbs extend outward and downward, and its front legs point with unmistakable alignment toward the two sons of Redhorn who stand below. These limbs are not ornamental. They direct attention, just as the ropes direct lineage. The turtle is not passive. It is the force that places, the body that contains, and the structure through which the meaning of what lies beneath it can be understood. What we see here is not burial in the poetic sense. The turtle, now recontextualized by its position and posture, becomes earth not as myth, but as system. It functions simultaneously as the source from which bodies emerge, the container into which they return, and the directional authority that establishes how their meanings will be preserved. It does not simply lie at the top of the image. It governs everything beneath it, positionally, symbolically, materially. Beneath this arc stand the two suns. The first, red-haired and marked with jaguar and zero, lifts the mound, the same form the turtle mirrors in its own domed back. He is not lifting an abstract concept. He is enacting a return. He is showing, through posture and burden, that the labour of his kind became the earth itself. His life and action are now sediment. His structure became structure. The ground upon which others stand is the mass of his own making. Beside him, the second sun, dark-haired, unmarked and quiet, does not lift. He does not mark, but he holds. He holds the rope whose other end has not yet been fixed, the thread that extends forward into what has not yet occurred. His place beneath the turtle is not one of action, but of constraint. He stands within the boundaries the turtle defines. He is not shaping the earth, but he is shaped by it. He is born into its enclosure and bound to its memory. Here the turtle reaches its fullest expression. It is no longer merely the earth rendered in form. It is the record of that form. Its function is not limited to the beginning of the cosmological arc. It returns at the end, transfigured. It contains not only the mass of creation, but the bodies of those who created and inherited it. It is the material evidence of lineage. It is what remains when breath, labour, and silence have passed. This triad completes the arc of the painting, not as a final flourish, but as a structural reversal of the first. Where Redhorn's breath became force and form, here the builder's labour and the inheritor's posture collapse back into matter. The turtle, which once received divine speech, now contains ancestral record. It is both the receiver of what came first and the preserver of what came last. There is no abstraction here. The mounds remain. The earth still contains what was placed in it. The bones, the tools, the alignment of burial to sky. They are not figments. They are testable. They are present. The turtle does not symbolize death. It demonstrates preservation. It is not a metaphor for what was lost. It is the actual location of what endures. The sons of Redhorn do not simply die beneath the turtle. They are claimed by it. Their positions are not rhetorical, they are geographic. The turtle's limbs point to them not as a gesture, but as a directive. This is where to look. This is where the line went. This is where memory was placed. The Gottschall pictograph, then, is no metaphor. And so the final triad turns the entire painting into instruction. It is not a record of beliefs, it is a record of locations, of relationships, of matter. The Gottschall panel does not end in mystery, it ends in direction. It points not upward, not forward, but downward, into the ground. And it says plainly without ornament, this is where they are, this is what remains. Now dig. 5 figures, 3 triads, 1 testimony. The Gottschall panel, as just examined, unfolds in 3 interwoven triads: cosmological initiation, historical descent, and archaeological interment. But these are not interpretive categories imposed upon an ambiguous scene. They are formal systems embedded in the panel's very structure, functioning not as myth, not as metaphor, but as logic, a sequence of operations rendered in pigment and position. What we find is not a tale told, but a framework built. The panel does not tell a story. It shows how stories are made, transmitted, and buried. This distinction matters. For too long, archaeology, particularly in relation to indigenous material culture, has favoured the metaphorical, the folkloric, the spiritual as explanatory crutches. Symbols are sacred, patterns are ritualistic, and when interpretation fails, mystery is evoked. But mystery is not knowledge, and sacredness, divorced from structure, is often the alibi of our ignorance. The Gottschall panel demands a different lens. It refuses passive romanticism. Its triads do not function like mythic icons suspended in ambiguity. They operate like systems. Cause leads to effect, position to inheritance, material to meaning. The ropes that bind figures are not decorative. They are visual syntax. The turtle is not a totem. It is a spatial operator. The panel does not ask for reverence. It asks for attention. To treat this as story is to miss what it is, an indigenous grammar of reality, a way of encoding cosmology, genealogy, and geography not in words but in relation. This is not belief in the anthropological sense. It is explanation. The panel's logic resists the reduction of native expression to fairy tale. It asserts that these people, these ancestors, were not merely narrating, they were modelling. And this is why actual understanding is better than telling ourselves stories. Stories seduce. They simplify. They allow us to treat the past as other, colourful, ungraspable, safely exotic. But understanding does not comfort. It confronts. It exposes the sophistication embedded in so-called primitive art, the deliberateness behind symbolic design. It obligates us to see these marks on stone not as evidence of myth, but as evidence of mind. Understanding strips away the veil of wonder so that actual knowledge can emerge. It replaces reverence with recognition. and in doing so, it exposes our own assumptions. The colonial reflex to reduce indigenous record to allegory, to treat structural intelligence as spiritual mystique. But the Gottschall Panel is not mystical, it is meticulous. What it reveals is not how ancient people believed the world was made, but how they understood its making. It gives us not a legend, but a lineage, not a myth of origins, but a diagram of emergence, descent, and material memory. And in the final gesture, when the turtle points not up to the gods, but down into the earth, it gives us not abstraction, but instruction. This is the place. This is what remains. This is how to read the ground. That is not a story. That is a system, and systems do not die. They wait to be understood.